This is the North Georgia Life Podcast. Embrace life where you live. Welcome to the North Georgia Life Podcast. It's Jake, your host, and in the first episode of the podcast, I said that part of the intent of the podcast was to connect a really great referral with the story behind the business. Today's episode is exactly that. This is something I know personally about because I have lived it and experienced it with my own life. It is a really incredible story, and it's one of those things that it's just a good reminder in life when you listen to this podcast. This is something that's local to our North Georgia region, but it is a good reminder that you never really know the road that people travel until you sit down and have a conversation with them. It's easy for us to think because people project a certain thing on social media or online or just in their day-to-day life that we somehow know the story behind the person when we really have no clue. Today's episode is going to be super engaging. I hope that you get a lot out of it, but I hope that is one of the things that you extract from it. Learn their story, and that's where relationships are built from. This is where, honestly, a large part of the friendship that I have here in this episode comes from, and I know you're going to love it. You can find us on Facebook at North Georgia Life Podcast. On Instagram, the same thing. If you have any questions, suggestions for future episodes, you can email me at northgeorgialifepodcast@gmail.com. With that, we'll get started. Welcome to the North Georgia Life Podcast. It's Jake, your host, and I have a special episode. I know I say that a lot, but this episode is special to a lot of people, myself personally included. We are here at a local business in the North Georgia region, Northlake Chiropractic, with Dr. Tammy, Excelsior.
Perfect.
She just told me how to pronounce her first name.
Tamara.
Beatty. And, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, not Beatty.
No.
She tells everybody to call her Dr. B because we're all clearly a bunch of ninnies. As a means of introduction, I've been a patient, client, and now a friend for about a year and a half, and my journey started with, effectively, I was the person who was never going to go to a chiropractor, and swore up and down I wouldn't. I knew people from years ago when I worked for a land developer that developed golf courses. A lot of golfers go to chiropractors, and they just they were always coming from a chiropractor, and I'm like, I don't want to go. I don't need something else in life and in my schedule and stuff like that. And in my stubbornness, I got to a point a couple years ago where it was around July 4th of 2018, and effectively could not move my neck for about 4 days. I don't know what happened. My wife was working at another doctor's office and had a patient come in raving about their chiropractor. Well, this is like day 3, and my wife is picking up what he's laying down, and he's like, where's your chiropractor? And it ended up being 20, 30 minutes away, and there's, as we know, there's dentists everywhere, there's chiropractors everywhere, there's eye doctors everywhere, but finding good ones that are good for the right reasons is difficult. So anyway, in no uncertain terms, I was forced to come to the chiropractor because when you can't move your neck for 4 days, it affects lots of things, and also it's not good for driving. So I came reluctantly, and I am what I would say is a raving fan and a true believer in my life leading up to that point. Since really when I can remember, back in college, I was having migraines, I don't know, every month, probably 2-3 migraines, sometimes more. It became part of normal life and adulthood and didn't really think a whole lot of it, even though it was terrible. Took a lot of Excedrin migraine. That was about the only thing that could touch the migraines. In the process of getting involved in being a chiropractic patient, my migraines went away. And I don't know if you remember that I sent you a note. Mm-hmm. It was about, I can't remember if it was 60 or 90 days, but it was a couple months after I started coming, and it just dawned on me that week that I sent her the note that was the first 60-day, 90-day period in my adult life that I had not had a migraine that I could remember. And, from a life improvement and quality of life perspective, it has genuinely changed my ability to function. And it's very hard to do my job in real estate when you have a migraine and you can't see straight, really don't want to hear anybody talk, and don't want to do anything. So that doesn't make for a very productive life. So, but she has a great story, which is part of the reason that I wanted to have her on the podcast, because it's not just a local business. It is a really good story behind it. And as I have told people that have come in that are new patients since, the same thing I was told when I started, she is the best around. So I know you don't want to acknowledge that wholeheartedly,
so kind.
But it's true. So let's start out with, you're not a Georgia native.
No, sir.
So how did you get here?
First of all, I want to say that was a killer intro.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I didn't even rehearse it.
And you know what I love about that is because I vividly remember opening that note and reading it and bringing tears to my eyes, because I have a very serious story, which we'll get into, I'm sure, about how I came to chiropractic. But no, I'm from Northern California. Don't hold that against me, please. This is a huge story in and of itself. It's all...
Yes.
I don't know how detailed you want me to get to it.
I think it's such a good story. We can spend a lot of time on the story itself, because your journey here is more than a job relocation, which is what brings a lot of people, or I was tired of taxes,
Right. Well, yeah, that was all not good either. But, it had actually nothing to do with a job relocation. Absolutely nothing. In 2009, I went through colon cancer, and I went through surgery 2 days after my 39th birthday. So I was pretty young to have colon cancer. Mm-hmm. And I was diagnosed with a pretty interesting kind of rare disorder. It's called Lynch syndrome. And basically it makes me predisposed to cancer everywhere throughout my body, much higher percentage. So why I even tell you that is because I had a very, very successful chiropractic office in Napa, California. I'm sure everybody's pretty familiar with Napa. Never drank any of the wine, but it was a great place to live. My practice was really successful and super stressful. And I kind of got freaked out. And I decided, man, we've got to change life. I can't have this stress. I can't, stress is a really good, being overly stressed is a really good way to have cancer.
Yeah.
Be more likely, So we decided to sell the business and change our life. The reason that we moved to Franklin, North Carolina, that is a whole nother story for a whole nother day. We won't get into that. But anyway, we moved all the way across the country to Franklin. And I had financed my business to the lady who owned it. And she was supposed to pay me amount that we could live on, actually, every month for a couple of years. And we got out to Franklin expecting that money. And about 2 months in, she just said, I'm not going to pay you anymore. Well... Yeah, it was like, okay, what do we do with that information, So we were pretty much broke in a very short amount of time. It was hard to get work. It was in 2010. Mm-hmm. So we all know what 2000
year for absolutely nothing.
Nothing, absolutely. Especially little tiny Franklin. It wasn't like a thriving metropolis where, all this opportunity was. So anyway, within the first 2 weeks we were there, by the way, if you've ever been to Franklin, the Sapphire Motel, not a hotel, the motel, we lived there for 6 weeks. 5 of us with our big Rottweiler. It was a fun day. Anyway, I was like, oh, Lord. But the reason I'm bringing all this detail up is because it's so integral to the story. The first 2 weeks that we were there, real estate person that was trying to help us find a place to live hands me this book. And she says, you need to read this. And it's called Fasting. Well, I've been a Christ follower since I was 12. Nobody ever told me about fasting. I'm like, that sounds terrible. I really like food. No, thank you.
Eating is awesome.
Yeah, it's super awesome. So I started reading this book because what else did I have to do? We sit in the middle of winter in Franklin. There's nothing to do. So I started reading it, and I started to fast for the first time. And I had this revelation from God that was just incredible. I'm like, oh my gosh, why haven't I ever read or learned about this before? I could go into some massive detail about how destitute we were during this 11-month period of living there. But it was like God was allowing us to go through the desert of our little life so that he can reshape us and help us to be different.
Mm-hmm.
And during that time, I fasted probably 2 months of the 11 that we lived there. And Jake, it's crazy how these miracles started happening. And it's not like the Red Sea part kind of miracles, but like money would show up in the mailbox that we weren't expecting so we could pay rent. Or people would come and bring us food. And it's kind of hard to admit that this is how bad our life was, especially considering where I am right now and how blessed we are. But it's part of the story.
Right.
And months went on. My husband finally got jobs, multiple. He worked full-time at Kmart, and full-time at McDonald's. And for an educated, 40-year-old dude, that was pride swallowing to have to do that. But, I love him so much for that he was willing to work hard at a menial job just so we could be okay. And then we met a friend, and she goes, "Where do you go to church?" Well, the answer was no place, even though I just got finished telling you what God was doing in my life. And she said, "You got to come to church with me." Like, okay. There's churches everywhere in the South, every 2 blocks, you know. I'm like, okay, I'm expecting this one. She goes, "Well, I go to Georgia." Like, wait a minute. You drive from Franklin to Georgia to go to church. She goes, "Yeah, you got to check it out." Like, whatever. What else do I have to do? I'm pretty bored. And so we drove down to Gainesville, and she brought me to Free Chapel. Now, I'm from a big place, but we went to a small church. There was maybe 50 people in that church, all growing up. And we drove up to this giant building, it's pretty huge. And I'm like, wow, that's impressive, but also a little intimidating. So we go in and sit down, out comes this pastor. I'm like, wait a minute. I've been reading this cat's book.
You had no idea.
I had no idea who he was.
That's hilarious.
Oh my gosh. So I'm like, oh my goodness. It's
the dude from the back of the book.
It is. I'm like, I've been reading your book 3 times this year already. So we would travel down as much as we could, but we didn't have a whole lot of money to have for gas and all this. So let me shorten the story. We ended up in January, because Free Chapel is a corporate fast where the whole church fasts as a group. We after being kicked out of 2 houses, we ended up living with the same friend who brought us to the church. And we decided to go through that fast. Well, I needed some big answers because I couldn't work in North Carolina. We were broke as a joke. It was just not working. We knew that's not where we were meant to be. So we're like, okay, God, we're going to go heavy and hard after you to figure out, what do you want? Because we've been spending 40 years doing what we want, and it wasn't working. So I decided to go without food for 21 days.
Wow.
So I just drank water. And I'm not saying that in a braggadocious sort of way.
Yeah.
I'm saying it because I had such a deep desire to know what God wanted for us. God, it makes me emotional just thinking about it. And people say, "Oh my gosh, how could you do that?" Like, my passion, I said this through the whole fast, my hunger and thirst for you is more than for food. And he did such incredible things through those 3 weeks that by the end of it, 21 days, we went from broke as a joke to having about $4,500 in 3 weeks.
Wow.
Just money out of the blue. It was enough to get us back to California and take over the business, because our landlord had been emailing me in that 21 days. He goes, "Hey, the lady that bought your business is defaulted on her lease. Do you want to come
figure.
back?" Yeah, it was a big surprise there. And I said, "Yeah, I want to come back," because I missed home. Oh, so bad. Haley, my daughter, and I, we missed home. Now, to give credit where credit's due, my husband says, "Hey, I think we should move to Gainesville." I'm like, no, like, oh my gosh, maybe I should have listened to him. So we ended up moving back to California immediately. Knew that's not where we were going to stay. So shorten the story just a little bit more. In 2012, we went through the fast again, and I heard the Lord's voice like, "You're talking to me." He said, "You need to move to Gainesville and be a part of the ministry out there." Okay, let's do it. So it took us a little over 2 years to get out here, but we sold everything and drove across the country again. At least we didn't have all our belongings in a horse trailer the first time we did. But we came out here. We had a house that we were renting, and there's more to this whole how I got this business story, but it all works into God provided this business. Mm-hmm. Can I tell you that part? Because it's pretty cool.
Yes.
Because we knew that we were going to come out here in 2013. Man, I was just miserable. You know, I was sitting in my little office, and the business was never what it was, because I was seeing, I don't know, like 350 people a week.
Wow.
Before we left. When I came back, she had just told everybody that she was moving to a different office. So all my patients,
oh my gosh,
everything, she took everything. And yeah, that was awesome. So in 2013, there's a lot of different chiropractic specific websites that you can look for practices for sale or, you know, job opportunities, what have you. I saw this business that was for sale in Gainesville. I'm like, what are the odds of that, you know? So I contacted, and it was through a broker, and he sent me all the info. I'm like, oh my gosh, this looks really good. And we were going to fly out to Gainesville because Free Chapel has a marriage conference every February, and we wanted to come. So we drove up to the office and looked in the windows because it was on a Sunday and the guy wasn't around, and we weren't supposed to talk to the doc. We were talking through a broker. Long story short, it just wasn't the right time. Fast forward to 2014, looking again, there's a business that wanted to hire an associate, meaning somebody to come work for the doc and then eventually buy it out. I'm like, well, let me contact this guy. And we again came out to the marriage conference in 2014 and say, hey, can we meet you guys? He says, sure, come on up, you know, and he gave us the address, and we drove up. And my husband looks at me and he goes, Tam, is this the same building we were at a year ago? I said, I think it is. And we drove up and we're like, no way. So in 2013, that chiropractor had sold the business to this new guy. The new guy bought it, but he moved to Athens, so he didn't want to commute every day. Well, I knew how much it was sold for because I had been looking at it.
Right.
And then I got, you know, we were in negotiations, and we never could figure out me having a salary or whatever. And finally I'm like, hey, you know, I'm moving. I need to know one way or the other. And he says, do you want to just buy it? I said, actually, yeah, that'd be great. Now, little caveat, I didn't have money. I didn't have money to buy a business, but I knew that God told us to move and that he'd make a way. So I said, yes, I did. I wanted to buy the business. And he told me a number, and I said, yes, because it was half of what the year before price was.
Wow.
Yeah, you think God's got his right timing to things? Isn't that crazy? So cool. So we ended up negotiating that, and he's like, yeah, you can pay me per month for it. Like, good, because I don't have that money, you know? And he wanted it paid off in a year and a half. And in back of my little natural head, I'm like, whoa, that's fast.
That's fast on-ramp.
Yeah, that's a big number in a short time. I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm not going to worry about it. I mean, God bless what we've been through, you know? So I'm like, great, let's do it. And I kid you not, God paid that off in 18 months.
Wow.
It was incredible. Now, we went through some pretty hard times, and we sacrificed a lot. But to see where the business started and where it is now, you know, when I came here, I said, Lord, I don't want this business to succeed without you. And I want it to succeed so incredibly that people go, that's God. I don't want the credit. I don't want the glory. I want you to have the glory. And man, he has done that in massive ways. So there's your really short story about how we got from California to Georgia. And I might add, it is the best decision we've ever made. We love it here. It's home.
Yeah. And have you been in this building the whole time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Over 5 years.
Which is even more remarkable to me because having been in the real estate world in this area for a while, I remember saying to people 5-6 years ago, as the economy picked up and recovered, and the real estate market and development started and all that stuff, I remember telling people now, probably 5 years ago, the limestone corridor is going to become the next. All of that scrub pine is going to be high-end retail very soon. It's all going to be developed, and it just wasn't a desirable, attractive part of Gainesville, to be frank. It was it was kind of that outlying area, and you happen to be on Limestone Parkway.
Yeah, buddy.
So,
well, in 2013, there was no Kroger.
Yeah, no Kroger.
2014.
You wouldn't have thought of Kroger.
Right. 2014, when we came to look at the business, they were building it. Like, whoa. Because when we came in 2013 and looked, like, man, this is really kind of out of the way in the sticks.
And this is not just any Kroger.
Oh.
This is like,
it's a kick butt Kroger.
The Mac Daddy Kroger of all Krogers.
Isn't it the biggest in the state?
I don't know. Amber told me that they sell shoes and stuff in there.
They do.
Like, what on earth?
I don't know. I went in there after they remodeled. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What?
I'm almost afraid to go in. I'm afraid there's going to be like a gondola and I'm going to get on. I'm not going to know where it goes to.
Amazing.
So what was the draw to chiropractic as a profession? What got you into that?
Story. Oh my gosh, this is so fun. I've ridden horses my whole life. Competitively, I still ride competitively. And when I was 16, I used to ride hunter jumpers. What that means, jumping over fences and stuff like that. And I'm kind of a knucklehead, a little bit of a massive tomboy and daredevil. That's not the greatest combo sometimes when you're with a horse. One day I was out jumping, practicing. Now, anybody who rides horses knows you don't go jump alone.
Yes.
Stupid. Guess what I was doing? Jumping my horse alone. And he was a booger. He was a little bit obnoxious. I have a pretty chill personality. So my trainer would always put me on the doofuses because I wouldn't get nervous about it. Mm-hmm. Anyway, we were jumping a fence, about 3'6". He was 16 two hands, so 16.2 times 4. He's pretty tall. And then me on top of that. So about my head was about 10 feet in the air when we went over the fence. Well, we go over the fence, and I have a helmet protecting my head, but obviously not body armor. And he bucked midway over the fence, and I lost my balance forward and landed square on my head. As any good horse person would do, they get back on and do it again. We go around the pen, same pick and thing. He bucks, I lose my balance, bam, right on my head. Well, now I'm angry. So you got a 16-year-old.
Now this horse is going to get a talking to.
Yeah, he probably did. 16-year-old stupid idiot out there falling on her head. Let's go do it again. So I did, and he did, and I did. So 3 times in a row, within about 10 minutes, I straight pile drive on my head. Well, as you might guess, I couldn't really see very well after that 3rd time. And I said, maybe I should put him away. So I did. And, I never told my folks. I never told anybody what had happened because I knew I'd get in trouble because I was supposed to be out there. Obviously, I had a concussion, never sought any treatment. Well, that started 9 years of daily headaches. Most of them were between 8 or 9 out of 10. And I had ridiculous vertigo. I had allergies that I'd never had before where like the highest level prescription meds weren't touching. I was depressed. I got sensitive to sound and crowds. I didn't like to go anywhere because like the stimulus was too much. I had a lot of other problems, but I got to a point where I said, man, if this is the rest of my life, I don't want to live. And I thought about dying. I didn't do anything about it, but I thought about it.
It was so miserable.
Yes. I was just,
yeah,
it's hellacious, So my parents, my stepmom and my dad who I lived with, my stepmom was an ER nurse. So we went the whole medical route, went to every specialist known. They did every test known. And the answer was always the same. Tammy, they were like proud of it. They're like, congratulations. We haven't found anything wrong with you. Like, excuse me. I know you're supposed to be the experts in this, but there is something wrong, And they gave me meds, and that just made me feel terrible and, really no help. So finally, my mom, who has always been very holistic in nature, said, hey, let's try chiropractic. What the heck do I have to lose? Let's go, you know? And I sat there with the doc. And first of all, he was the first one to shake my hand, look me in the eye, and said, what can I do to help you? It just touched me that it was a real person, you know, an interaction, not just a coat. And he explained what chiropractic was. And I'm assuming we'll get to that later. But it just made so much sense to me. And I asked him, I'm like, Dr. Joe, why have these specialists never explained this to me?
Right.
And he said, they don't even acknowledge that it's a problem.
Right.
And because it absolutely changed my life, 180 degrees from wanting to die to, this is how I like to explain it. And anybody that's too young might not get this reference, but you know, at the end of Caddyshack, or the little gopher, you know, he's all going through the tunnels and all that. But then he comes out and he starts dancing. He's like, I'm all right. You know, that's how I felt my life changed from being dark and compressed and hopeless to being outside in the sun. And I know it sounds kind of corny, but that's how it was for me. I'm like, I have to do this. I have to give back, because if I could help one person the way I was helped, my life will be complete. Thankfully, it's not just been one person at this point.
Yeah. One of the things that I love about your office, your office there, your room that you actually do the adjusting in, you have things around the office, pictures and different things that all have a special meaning, and a lot of them are tied to patients that have stories that are all fantastic. So there's so many stories. I know most of the time in these episodes, I ask, you know, what's the best part? Is there a story that stands out? And I know from knowing you, there's not probably one story that stands out, but I do want to get you to tell the story of the hands. The hands.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's going to make me cry. Luis had, when he came to see me, this was in Napa, California. He came to see me in, gosh, I think he was like 38, 39 years old. And he was from Mexico, and he had been out on the streets since he was 9 years old. So he had to be pretty tough and resilient, got a lot of fights, he had a rough life.
Yeah.
I don't really know how he ended up in Napa, because we never talked about that, but he did. He and his wife, Nancy, came to see me, actually, kind of like you. His wife was the first one to come, and she's like, you've got to go see Dr. B. And he's like, no, I'm good. But finally, she talked him into coming, and that poor man had migraines for 30 years. Every day, his life was a migraine. And he said to me, he's like, I don't know what you can do, but if you can do anything, I'd be grateful. And I knew I could help him because I'd been helped, you know. And he came to me one day, and he had this huge box. It was heavy. And he says, I want to thank you. I don't have migraines anymore.
Wow.
Yeah. And
that was after how long, you think?
30, of care?
Yeah.
It wasn't very long. I mean, God, that was a while back. Maybe he had his symptoms had really gone down almost immediately, but I think within 2 months. I mean, I'm guessing. I don't really remember. But so I opened up this box, and in this is the steel sculpture of two hands that are open, and he outlined his hands and not welded, but I don't know how do you
cast?
Something like that. These hands, and he said, I want to have you understand how you completely changed my life, and I want you always to remember that your hands changed my life. And it's so touching, because when you just do what you do because that's what's in you, you don't think about that stuff as in how much it means to somebody else, because it means so much to me to give. And I look at those hands every day. They're the one one thing in my office that reminds me constantly of where I've come from, because like you, the headaches were it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry I get all like emotional about it, but it kills me to know that so many people are out there suffering.
Yeah.
Mostly because they don't know that there's alternative.
Yeah.
You know? So.
Yeah, for me, I still remember when we did the initial consultation and did the x-rays, and you put my x-rays, my films up, and I think I said out loud, I know I told Amber when I went home, I said I looked at the x-rays of my neck, and I just was like, well, I don't need a medical degree to see the problem here.
Right.
You know,
right.
It was like, you know, these three things are aligned, and then, oh, this one's way out in left field.
Yeah.
And I had been going and spending like a lot of money at a massage therapist, she was fantastic. I mean, great for just relaxing, but I was going because of the migraines. Mm-hmm. And the problem was not the tension so much in the muscles, is that everything the muscles were tied to was out of line, was out of whack. And no one had ever explained that. When you explained it and when then we saw it, it's like, well, duh. Like, this
That's
makes
what I thought.
Perfect sense.
Right.
And then all of the other things that your spinal column ties to everything.
Everything.
It's the highway of your body.
That's
and so when that's out of whack, I mean, that's where, like you talked about, allergies and things with your digestion and
everything. Yeah. The nervous system literally controls your whole body, every single cell. 90% of the nervous system has no sensation whatsoever. 90. That means you cannot feel it. So a lot of times I struggle with patients going, well, I feel pretty great, doc. I said, okay. So you're telling me you have reference to about 10% of the trillions of cells that you own. The other 90% can't tell you that. And, you know, if that communication is off in any way, shape, or form, your body's not going to be at its best. Now, maybe it's a little change and you'd never notice it. Maybe it's a huge change like you and I had. Mm-hmm. You know, but the bottom line is we're designed to self-heal and self-regulate, meaning it takes care of itself, you know. Mm-hmm. But when that interference to that communication is put into play, it's just not going to work right. Mm-hmm. My job really is I get to push a reset button every single day to the patients that come and see me. Nervous system, turn back on the way you're meant to. Not like it's cut off, you know. It's not like you're lying on the floor.
Right.
Like I should have been when I fell off my horse. But it's so cool to see little changes that start happening. For instance, like I take care of children. Mm-hmm. Actually, back in Franklin, there was a kid who had tics, you know, that head shakes, and so much so that he used to love to read, but he couldn't read because his head had so, you know, I don't know how to say it other than he had too many tics that his eyes couldn't focus.
Oh, man.
I know. And he loved to read. And his parents talked to me, you know, it was a football practice, and they found out what I did, and they said, well, can you do something for my son? I said, I don't know. Let me check him out. And man, oh man, his little neck was jacked. And a lot of times people are like, why would you adjust a child? Like, why wouldn't you? Their nervous system's even more important than yours because it's still growing and developing and things are, you know, but back to the little kid. I adjusted him once. Tick stop.
What?
Yeah. Once.
Mm.
You know, the birth process itself is our first physical trauma that can cause our spine to misalign. And, 10 centimeters is not a big space. Yeah. It is not, you know, and you got the mom pushing from the inside and the doc using their head as a handle, pulling them out. Mm-hmm. You know, they twist them and turn them in normal deliveries. Even C-sections are sometimes worse because there's a vacuum effect inside. But I take care of little babies because why would you want to start your life not right? Mm-hmm. It's an important thing to realize that pain is such a small part of this. Now, nobody wants pain. I don't want pain, but I'd rather, you know, I've been adjusted at least once a week for almost 25 years. Mm-hmm. do the math. I'm almost 50. It's a long time, a lot of adjustments, but I don't get sick. I haven't been to the doctor in 10 years. And the reason I went that time was because I had colon cancer, kind of important. I was like, hey, maybe I should go.
You get a pass.
But, and I'm not trying to say that everybody that gets chiropractic care is never going to get sick,
right,
or never going to go to the doctor. But this is my health care. My husband, my children, my family, we all get adjusted on a very regular basis. Not because we're hurting, although we do sometimes, but because we understand the principle that when the brain and the body communicate at their best, everything works better.
Right.
Yeah.
I would normally throw out a theoretical, what would you tell someone who's looking to get into what you're doing, nuggets of wisdom. But we don't have to be theoretical, because your daughter Haley is in school right now to be a chiropractor.
Yeah.
What nuggets of wisdom, experiential advice, counsel have you given her to this point of when she was thinking about getting into this line of work, and now that she's actually in school for this? And I know you're her mom, so theoretically you don't know anything. You're stupid because you're a parent.
Actually, you know what? It's so cool, because it was a surprise to me when she told me she wanted to be a chiropractor. That was the last thing I ever thought any of my kids would want. It's not easy.
Right.
No. The work is awesome. The patients are awesome. The public perception is hard.
Yes.
The come against that we encounter from the outside world, we'll just put it like that. Okay. Yeah. The outside world pressure, we're like the black sheep of the family.
Right.
That's hard. It is not a career you want to go into because you think you're going to make good money. No, you can make as much as you want to. I mean, I know people who are making millions. Not me, just saying. But it's a challenging profession. Most people don't understand the amount of education. People all the time say, well, you're not a real doctor. I'm like, wow, that's funny. My education sure felt that way. But the nugget, do something you love, that you're passionate about. And the money can come from then. And Haley, my daughter, I'm so proud of her. She worked for me for 5 years here in this office. And it was her. It's kind of the same cool story, because I forgot to tell you, I worked for my chiropractor for 3.5 years before I went to school. I saw thousands of people get better. She sat behind this desk and seen thousands of people get better. And she goes, I want to do it.
Yeah.
I would love to bring more people into the profession as really high quality doctors that care. Right. They're not here for a buck, but that care and want to make a difference in people's lives. Did I answer that question?
Yes.
I don't even know.
That's kind of, and I didn't really know, but that's kind of what I gathered, is when you literally have a front row seat at what's happening in people's lives, goes without saying, how you feel affects everything else in your life.
Everything.
And especially if you're experiencing pain and that goes away, but then, some of the things that, don't necessarily cause pain but affect your life, like digestive issues, that all sorts of things like allergies and just different conditions that traditional medical office is going to try to just give you a pill to,
which doesn't solve it.
That's the masking of the symptom instead of treating the cause source, of that.
Can I interrupt you? Because I just thought of another cool story. It's a shorter one. One of the things that you might not ever think about chiropractic could help with, and another caveat, I am not saying that chiropractic will help with this at every time, but I had a young lady come in about 2 years ago, and she and her husband had been trying to get pregnant. Wasn't working. We chatted about that in the initial consultation, and I just kind of mental note, and every single vertebra, the nerve roots that come out from there go to certain organs, and I know that. I know where everything goes. I have to know that. And I just made a note. When I was working on her, I worked specifically on parts that went to those parts. And she just had twins.
Wow.
No help from meds.
Wow.
And when she came in and told me, I just cried with her. I was like, that wasn't our goal. Our goal wasn't say, hey, let's get you pregnant.
Let's get you knocked up.
Yeah. Well, how'd you get pregnant? Well, I went to this chiropractor, and this is kind of a weird thing. That wasn't my goal. my goal with her was to help her nervous system work the best it possibly could and let her body do the rest.
Mm-hmm.
And those are some cute babies. That's a story that, talking about changing somebody's life. Mm-hmm. And I don't take credit for that. Please understand that. It's just her body was not doing what it was supposed to. And then when it was able to, well, here are these two little nuggets that came out. Yeah.
From where you've been over the last, you've been in this location
a little over 5 years.
About 5 years.
Yeah.
What would you like to see stay the same, grow, be different over the next 5?
Wow.
And you and I have talked a little bit about this. So.
Yeah, that's a super exciting. So I have some like short-term, medium range, long-term goals. When we moved here, I told God, I said, make me as busy as you want me to be. I will put my nose to the ground and just work because I love it. And ultimately, you mentioned Haley's in Life University, chiropractic student now. I don't know if I even told you this. My husband started chiropractic school a long time ago. And I got sick and he had to stop. Well, he told me about 7 months ago, he goes, I want to go back.
Wow.
Yeah. I said, great, let's go. He is starting. Ironically, he will either start in January or start the Doctor of Chiropractic program in the same quarter as Haley, which is crazy to me. But ultimately, my goal is to have a multi-doc office and have more adjunctive things. I really believe in exercise, and I've seen how it's changed my own symptoms, how being stronger and more fit has helped me feel tons better. And, I'm going to be 50 in a couple months, and I'm stronger and fitter, maybe not skinnier, but stronger and fitter than I've ever been in my life. And so I'd like to incorporate a lot of things around helping people be more functionally strong. I mean, it's an epidemic that people are sitting for their life. Right. That is not good. A healthy body is not made to sit. And I want to help facilitate overall healing. I want to expand, not just because I want to make more money, because I can't stand it when people are like, oh, it must be nice to make all this money. Like, if you only knew how much care I actually gave away, you wouldn't say that. But the point really is that I want to expand the offerings to what people really need. Ultimately, I would love to have multifaceted, large facility that we had adjunctive stuff.
Overall wellness,
fitness, training, rehab. I'm being a little bit abbreviated with my description because I kind of want to keep a little to myself until I fully develop it. But it's exciting. It's exciting to say, hey man, we're gonna out of abundance actually expand instead of hoping that someday we could be busy enough.
So I probably know the answer to this question, but what's one of your favorite things to do, places to be around the North Georgia area?
Absolute favorite thing to do is ride my horse.
How many horses do you have?
I have 2.
2.
Yeah.
Which do you ride the dumb one still?
That was a really long time ago. He's like way dead by
now.
No,
I mean the dumb one of the 2. One's got to be dumb and the other one's got to be normal.
No, I don't even know how to answer that. I show paint horses. For people that don't know what that is, they're basically quarter horses, which is a stock type horse with spots. So think of a pinto color, but they have special breeding and whatever. So I ride Western pleasure and trail classes, which that means there's poles and obstacles, and it's all like it really feeds my math brain because you have to be in a certain cadence, and there's distances and all this kind of fun stuff. So that is my therapy. And then besides that, I love to paddleboard out by the rowing venue. We live close there. I love paddleboarding.
It seems like it would be incredibly boring to me and hard.
I
would like to paddleboard on a river.
Yeah, going downstream.
Going downstream.
You know, it's funny. I got inspired to write a book. I haven't written it yet, but so I went every day for a certain amount of days out paddleboarding, and some days, it's glass. It's pretty easy.
Yeah.
No, and I had a certain distance and a certain time, and it was like 40 minutes or whatever. And then some days, it's not so glassy. So this one day I went out, and it's just windy. And I'm like, all right, your adversity builds strength. And I do a lot of thinking out there. That's why it's not boring to me. I do praying. I come up with ideas. It's really kind of almost like a therapy time. And it builds great shoulders, let me tell you. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm going out, and it's windy. And I go my full distance. And then I'm like, okay, let's go back. And it got windier. Jake.
And you're tired-er.
Oh, yeah. And at one point, I just started laughing hysterically. I'm like, I am not moving at all. And then I had this moment of panic, like, how am I going to get to my house? But I just kept going. And I had this whole idea of a book, how paddleboarding is really a metaphor for life. Balance, you got to dig in, but not too hard, too fast, or you're going to go off the back.
Right.
Adversity is going to come. The wind's going to come. Some days it's going to go, I don't know. It was like this whole, so no, it wasn't boring whatsoever, because I had this, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to write this book from this hour and a, normally it's like 40 minutes. That time is almost 2 hours.
Oh my
the wind
gosh.
was so bad, yeah. So I love to be outside.
Before we go, I like to do what I call lightning round, which is a question that generally has nothing to do about anything.
Okay, cool.
This one is called As God is My Witness. We've talked about God a little bit here, so just figured this one would be appropriate. As God is my witness, have you ever called 867-5309 and asked for Jenny?
No, but I sing it all the time. Jenny. No, never done it.
Well, I feel like I did in middle school at some point.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I was a long time ago. I don't remember.
Middle school, I had one not great influence friend that liked to prank call people all the time.
Like, is your refrigerator running kind of?
Yeah, and worse stuff. I was usually just on the call. He was the brains and the whatever. I don't know if
instigator.
I don't know if people still do that with cell phones. I'm like, most people don't even answer phone numbers they don't recognize.
Caller ID kind of messed prank calls up for all of us.
Yeah. Okay, so the course of your story and some of the things that we've shared, somebody wants to come in, share with a little bit about how you handle new patients, how you handle people who are, like I was, just coming in for what I would say is a very light tire kicking, which is...
Yeah.
I've never been in a chiropractor. I don't know anything about it other than what I've heard on this podcast and what somebody told me one time at, my optometrist or whatever. How do people find you? Were you online on social media? And then a little bit about how the entry level just consultation goes.
How it works, yeah. First of all, I'm super lame with social media, except my personal Instagram, which is all about fitness anyway. But we do have a Facebook page that people can actually contact me directly, and I'll answer questions. That's easy. It's just Northlake Chiropractic. One of the things I try and tell all my new people is that this is a guilt-free, judgment-free zone. I don't have any, what's the phrase? Access to grind. I don't have any motives. I'm just here to help. And if somebody wants to just have a conversation, come on in, talk to me. I'm happy to do that, because chiropractic's weird. It's weird. Like, you're going to do what to me? That does not sound natural. So
we've all seen too many Van Damme movies and Steven Seagal movies where they snap their necks.
Yeah, which is, people hear me. That's not going to happen. What I'm trying to say is I go to great lengths to make sure that I'm incredibly thorough. That's why I take films. There are things, Jake, I've found cancer. I've found a congenital defect on this one young lady that CHOA didn't find, that Scottish Rite didn't find, and I found this congenital defect that if she could have died, and she ended up having to have surgery. But bottom line is, I take films, and sometimes people get irritated about that. But I'm like, look, if you're going to come see me, you're going to get films because I want to make sure that I'm doing the absolute right thing for you. And some offices don't do that, and that's their business. But, whatever the Georgia Board of Chiropractic standards are, I want to go above and beyond that, because ethically, morally, that's what I need to do. So the new patient consult is an hour. We go over health history, we go over trauma history, we take films. I want to know everything that's going on with somebody, because you're not just a back that walks in. I want to know everything, because how can I know if you're having a difficult time conceiving unless we have that conversation, you know?
Right.
And I thoroughly explain chiropractic in a very simple way. And the no guilt, no judgment is, if you get to the end of that conversation with me and you don't want to do anything, no big deal. Have a good night. Oh, and I do work on people the first day. I know some offices don't do that. I don't pressure people into getting really long care, although I do recommend what they need. And if they choose not to do what they need and they want to do what they just want to do, okay, it's fine with me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm here to help. And if it's 1 or 2 visits, or if it's once or twice a day for the rest of your life, I mean, obviously I'm exaggerating, but it's okay.
Right.
And we have, we take insurance, we have cash plans, Medicare. I mean, pretty much as diverse as possible to help as many people as possible.
Yeah, and that's where we started, and you can change it at any time.
Of course.
Because we started because of the issues that I was having. Personally, we started where I was coming 2-3 times a week for, I don't know, the first few months, and have scaled back to about once a week now. And once a week is good for us now. It's,
me too. That's what I get adjusted.
I wonder, and I'm thankful that my wife overrode my stubbornness, because if I had just come once a week for those first few months and it had, helped some but not really, would I have just dismissed it of, this is one more thing that doesn't work and one more expense and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, okay, if this is something that is constantly a problem, I need to be consistent in treating it, and then the hope that this is not going to be a lifelong thing. And that's what's happened, is it has gone from multiple times a week to now once a week at the most. I guess the point is, you don't have to start and say,
there's no pressure.
Yeah,
there's none. I didn't mean to interrupt, but it brings up a great point, because I think one of the most frustrating things with me with chiropractic is that, one, there's various degrees of skill with doctors and various degrees of knowledge. And just because you've gone to one doc doesn't mean that chiropractic has failed. Chiropractic doesn't fail. The application of the principles perhaps isn't as skillfully delivered as it could be. And I guess the last part of that is that if somebody doesn't give it enough time, you can't beat yourself up for 40 years and expect to be fixed in a visit or 2. But if that's all somebody wants, I'm not going to guilt them anymore.
Right. Gosh, we covered a lot of life.
I know. This was super fun. I want to do it again.
Yeah. Your Facebook is Northlake Chiropractic.
Right.
What is this? What is the physical address here?
2458 Limestone Parkway, right next to Dollar General.
Yeah, right next. That's right. It's the
easiest,
the most inconspicuous, unassuming retail location there is.
I know, right?
And this story comes out of this.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, and you can run by the Super Kroger on the way out and get,
or El Maguey. They've got great Mexican food.
Oh yes,
I know, right down the hallway.
Are
we both hungry?
I just got hungry. All right, well, with that, we're going to go grab some tacos, and we'll see you guys next time. This is the North Georgia Life Podcast. Embrace life where you live.